every time you open social media, there is a good chance that you will be hit with something which will offend you. So a couple of days ago, I needed my quick fix of brain rot, so I obviously reached for my phone. I was presented with a video from an influencer, and she was talking about her diet, and she seemed maybe a little bit angry, how people can sometimes get when they are talking about their diet online and their beliefs, what is right and what is not. And she said this: I don't eat bread, pasta, rice, or any of that trash. I understand that some of these things may not fit into your diet, whether you're celiac or try to avoid carbs, but putting these three things into one sentence and calling them trash was quite baffling to me. Aren't those three sources of food, which essentially saved our survival, shapes our cultures every day and brings generations together? Then I especially thought about bread, how it's always been such a huge part of my life. Sometimes I have it 3 times a day. And I started to ask myself, how did it become part of our lives? I know how important it is, but I didn't exactly know the full history. How did people find out about those magical grains? So I went on a little bit of a deep dive, and this is what I found out. What is believed to be the world's oldest bread was found in Jordan. This was most likely made by the Natufians, semi-nomadic people who lived about 1400 years ago. The Natufians weren't farmers yet, but foragers. This means that they went through the labor-intensive process of harvesting wild grains, grinding them, and baking bread long before agriculture developed. It was made from wild cereals like barley, einkorn, and oats, mixed with water and baked on stones. This was more like a flatbread than an loaf of bread, and likely consumed as a wrap for roasted meat. Before this recent discovery, archaeologists thought that bread began around 9,000 years ago with the agriculture in the Fertile Crescent. This is a region in the Middle East and is called fertile because it's river valleys which provide rich soil, water, and favorable climate. This area is also called the cradle of civilization because it's where humans first developed farming, cities, and writing. So around 9,000 years ago, people started planting and cultivating wild plants intentionally. This was a big shift from hunting, gathering to farming. So they planted wheat and barley, harvested and ground that grain to bake flatbreads. This created something revolutionary: the possibility of a surplus of food, since the grain could be stored. There was no longer a need to wander around, and so out of those flatbreads, villages, cities, and civilization began to exist, the foundation of settled life. In ancient Egypt, bread was central to everyday life. It was a staple food and also currency. Workers who built the pyramids were paid with loaves. So that's probably the secret to how they had the energy to build them. No aliens involved. Or, they exchanged a couple of loaves in order for them to place the pyramids right then and there. Who knows? Ancient Egypt is also believed to be the discovery of fermentation. This was probably more an accident, with a loaf of dough being left out for too long. The yeast and bacteria did their work, making the dough rise. This also changed the taste, making it more flavorful. They primarily used emmer wheat and barley, grounding those into a coarse flour. It was then left out to ferment and baked in clay pots. The Greeks adopted the knowledge and played around with different shapes and flavors, adding things like nuts and honey. The Romans industrialized bread production. By around 100 BCE, Rome had public bakeries and professional bakers' guilds. The baked loaves were distributed to citizens as part of a grain dole, which meant free bread to feed the masses. This is where the phrase bread and circuses comes from. Give people food and entertainment and they won't revolt. Throughout the Middle Ages, bread remained the foundation of European diets. It even determined social classes. The nobility ate fine white bread made from sifted white flour. Peasants often ate coarse, dark bread from rye, barley, or oats. In medieval banquets, thick slices of stale bread, called trenchers, were used as plates. In the 1700s, bread riots erupted when shortages or high prices threatened this essential food. This shows how food security also means political stability. In 1789, women led marches for bread, storming marketplaces and demanding food for their families. France suffered from bad harvest, inflation, and shortages. When the wheat prices rose, so did the cost of bread. This was life-threatening since poor families spent most of their income just to eat, leaving little for anything else. Hunger was everywhere. The March on Versailles in the October of 1789 began as a protest over bread shortages. While royalty lived in luxury, the working class struggled to even survive. So the marching crowd stood in front of the golden, glittering castle, demanding affordable bread. The royal family was forced to move from Versailles to Paris, symbolically placing them under the watch of their citizen. So this shows that bread was much more than nourishment. It was justice, survival, and ultimately a spark for revolution. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, when mechanized milling and baking transformed bread making. The invention of roller mills produced very fine white flour cheaply, making white bread the dominant type. Commercial bakers' yeast became widespread, speeding up the traditional sourdough methods. In 1928, Otto Rohwedder invented the bread slicing machine, giving rise to sliced bread, which was so revolutionary that it inspired the phrase, "the best thing since sliced bread." Now, industrial baked bread were soft, packaged loaves, which are often criticized for lacking nutrition. So let's have a look how we went from a traditional loaf of bread to something like, let's say, Wonder Bread. Traditionally, flour was made from whole grains, which contained all the parts of a whole grain. Those parts are the bran, germ, and endosperm. The bran is the outer layer. This is the tougher outer shell of the grain. It contains fiber, B vitamins, antioxidants, and trace minerals. It protects the seed from pests, moisture, and sunlight. The germ is the part of the seed which can sprout into a new plant. It contains healthy fats, vitamin E, B vitamins, antioxidants, and minerals. It's basically the life force of the seed and contains oils and nutrients for growth. The endosperm is the starchy inside, which is mostly carbohydrates and some protein. It contains a smaller amount of vitamin and minerals than the other parts. It's the largest part of the grain and provides energy for germ during sprouting. With the industrial roller milling, flour became highly refined, removing fiber, vitamins, and minerals, which makes the flour softer and whiter but less nutritious. Since the government wanted to avoid nutrient deficiencies in the population, the solution was to enrich the flour. Things like iron, B vitamins, and folic acid were added. This is also why you see enriched bleached flour on Wonder Bread. Freshly milled flour is slightly yellow, but in the 20th century, white bread became a symbol for status. To get that bright, uniform look, manufacturers added bleaching agents, Fats and sugars were then included to make the bread soft, sweet, and fluffy, while helping it stay fresh longer. Industrial bread making machines required dough that was strong, consistent, and easy to handle. The solution? Additives like datum and mono and diglycerides to improve texture and elasticity. Finally, enzymes and emulsifiers enhance softness, volume, and stability, making a loaf appear freshly baked even weeks after it left the factory. Modern industrial bread is designed for convenience and uniformity, rather than the natural flavor and texture of traditional handmade loaves. Moving away from a simple 4-ingredient food, Wonder Bread has more than 20 ingredients. From flour and water to emulsifiers, preservatives, and dough conditioners. Even though it's a hefty list, none of them are inherently dangerous. It's soft, fluffy, and long-lasting, but it's also not the healthiest choice. It's high in refined sugars and carbs and low in fiber and nutrients, which can contribute to blood sugar spikes and poor gut health. Luckily, the traditional sourdough-style bread is on the rise again, which has a lot more added health benefits. So I understand the criticism when it comes to brands like Wonder Bread, where a lot of flavor, texture, and nutrition is lost. But that's with everything that's highly processed. You have to make your own choice about what you want to consume. But as we have found out, bread is more than only nutrition. It's a symbol and a ritual. The English word companion originates in Latin, meaning breadfellow or messmate. This combines com, which means with or together, and the word panis, bread or food. This symbolizes the importance of sharing a meal or bread with someone else. This is also seen in religion. To break bread means trust, hospitality, and peace. This is what Jesus does as he speaks the words, "This is my body given for you." He identified it with his own body, which he would sacrifice for humanity. The Jewish prayer before meals begins with, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, who brings forth bread from the earth." Challah, a special bread, is made by plating or braiding 3 or 5 ropes of dough into a shape of a ladder, which is said to carry prayers to heaven. This is served on Shabbat and festivals to be blessed and shared on the family table. In Islam, food is seen as a gift from Allah, never to be wasted or mishandled. There is also a tradition or saying of Prophet Muhammad encouraging tearing bread rather than cutting it, since this is a sign of respect. In Hinduism, the daily bread, like chapati, symbolizes the necessity for survival. It's prepared with care and according to religious purity laws. The first roti made each day is often offered to a cow, which brings blessings, respect, and prosperity. So food, including bread, is transformed into a blessing and is seen as a bridge between humans and the divine. So every culture found a way to turn grain into something nourishing and meaningful. It encodes culture, reflects technology, and adapts to climate. In France, you bring a crunchy baguette for your picnic in the park. In Italy, you enjoy focaccia soaked in olive oil on a sunny day. On German dinner plates, you can find dark rye bread. In India, you dip your naan into the curry you just cooked. Chinese bao can be served to you according to your craving, either with a delicious vegetable filling to make it into a savory snack or custard for satisfying that sweet craving. The variations are endless, but the meaning is always the same. Satisfy hunger, bring comfort, and create culture. So whether you look at workers spending their lifetime building pyramids, or you open your TikTok profile to see a clip of Taylor Swift talking about how she's sending self-made sourdough to her friends, it's something which has a safe place in our everyday lives and it's been that way for a very long time. It represents health and status. White bread used to be served on the plate of nobility. Nowadays, a health-conscious person skips those and goes for a whole grain or even gluten-free version. Bread brings together communities. It creates ritual and is a necessity to well-being, whether that's personal or political. The French Revolution made the people stand in front of Versailles, demanding their share of bread. Today, in Egypt, the Tamween program is a government initiative which provides essential food items, especially to low-income households, primarily distributing baladi bread through a network of ration cards. It is still a sign of fairness and access. So I think it's fair to say that the discovery of grinding grains into flour and baking them over fire has created and saved our survival. It brings us together every single day, and it's a sign for comfort and nourishment.